Good afternoon, because I'm speaking from Ireland. I am Maureen McGuire, President of Soroptimist International. I'm delighted to welcome you to this Commission on the Status of Women's side event, New Paradigm for Women, Dignity Through Decent Work, in conjunction with the Permanent Mission of the Argentina Republic at the UN. Back in 2014, the then Secretary General UN Ban Ki-moon said, "Experience shows that economic growth on its own is not sufficient. We must do more to empower individuals through decent work, support people through social protection, and ensure the voices of the poor and marginalized are heard." It is still the same today. Creating communities and workplaces that value women's work and the value of working women is possible, but only if we work together. Women and girls in all their intersecting identities must have tangible control over their lives and their future. Ensuring their ability to participate equally in the economy is essential to creating a healthier, more gender equal world for all. A little housekeeping before I pass over to Maria. We are recording this event, so if you do not wish your picture recorded, please switch off your video cameras. Everyone is muted at the moment, so when you come to speak, may I ask you to unmute yourself. The bios of each speaker will be entered into the chat. And may I ask you, if you'd like to ask a question at any time, just to enter it into the chat function also. I'm looking forward to an inspiring event as we hear from our speakers this afternoon. May I now hand over to Maria Fornella, Soroptimist International representative to the UN, who is our moderator for this afternoon's side event.
Thank you very much, Maureen. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, everybody. I want to extend a warm welcome on behalf of Soroptimist to our co-sponsor, Argentina. The ambassador will be talking to us in a few minutes. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to all the distinguished panelists and to all participants from all over the world. Thank you for being here for this CSW 66 side event sponsored by Soroptimist International and Argentina. A new paradigm for women, dignity through decent work. After 2 years of unprecedented upheaval and fast-paced change, during which our human ability to adapt, to evolve, indeed to survive, has been challenged, we have learned many things about the world and about ourselves. One is that we will only be able to overcome future challenges, natural disasters, and pandemics through solidarity and social justice. Another one is that no matter how fast the world changes, work will always remain central to our lives. All human beings struggle for dignity and recognition. And crucial to this primal need is dignity at work. As you all know, the review theme for this year's CSW is Women's Economic Empowerment in the Changing World of Work, which was the priority theme of CSW 61 5 years ago. 5 years later, the issue has acquired new urgency. COVID has affected women's participation in the labor market, accelerated previous trends of job losses and violence and harassment in the workplace and at home, raised several other urgent key issues. Changes in the organization of work involving when, how, and where we work, along with rising inequality, mean that we're at a critical time to transform the world of work to ensure that women have decent work with fair and safe working conditions and human rights protections to help reduce gender gaps and eliminate stereotypes and discrimination. The future of work will depend on decisions taken by us, advocates, policymakers, workers, employers, and informed by our values and our own commitment to social justice. The decent work agenda is cross-sectoral and embedded in all SDGs and Agenda 2030. The objective of this panel discussion is to address main aspects of decent work: rights promotion, social dialogue and social protection, job creation, and education as they affect the dignity of all women. So today we're going to hear from the representative of a member state who's here with us, and I'll introduce her in a minute, and 5 experts from different fields and backgrounds to explore instruments and best practices that will transform the future world of work. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Her Excellency Maria del Carmen Squeff, Permanent Representative to the United Nations for the Government of Argentina, to deliver opening remarks. Her Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Maria. Good afternoon, dear friends and colleagues. First of all, I want to thank Maria Fornella, co-chair of the NGO Committee of the Commission for Social Development, for organizing this very timely and important meeting that allows us to share good practices and experiences in the field of the war and work, as well as the importance of economic autonomy for women. We are honored to co-sponsor this event, and we are sure that we will have a fruitful discussion. First of all, let me share with you that Argentina has a strong commitment in the fight against gender-based violence in all spheres, and this is also reflected through the ratification of the ILO Convention 190 on violence and harassment in the world of work. This process was completed last February 2021 through the deposit of the instrument of ratification. In effect, the convention set a roadmap for us to continue working to prevent and eliminate gender violence, forcing us to carry out normative and other transformations that bring us closer to a society free of violence. Argentina is the fourth country that ratified the convention, and since its ratification, it has 1 year to adapt the internal regulations to the provisions of the instrument and, in particular, in enacting a law that embraces the provision of the Convention 190. The Ministry of Labor, Employment and Social Security, together with the Ministry of Women, Genders and Diversity, are currently working to guarantee this implementation. In addition, I would like to share with you that Argentina is one of the countries that is doing the national presentation today on a review team focused on the situation of women in the world of work. In that regard, I would like to share measures implemented by the government of Argentina to promote the economic empowerment of women and LGBTI persons, so they have the right to live a life free from violence. The measures, the first, the Ministry of Women, Genders and Diversity launched last April the Produce program, in Spanish, Programa Producir. This initiative promotes the development of projects for women and LGBTI persons that are going through situations of gender-based violence by providing them economic and technical assistance for the creation of strengthening of projects that are carried out by social and community organizations. Two, another concrete example is the program called Registradas, or Registered Women in English, launched last September 2021, that promotes access and permanence on employment for private house workers by guaranteeing their financial inclusion. I will briefly explain how it works. A, the employer is in charge of registering the worker and paying the corresponding contribution. B, a free salary account is automatically opened in the name of the worker in the National Bank of Argentina. C, the state transfers to the worker between 30 and 50% of the salary, while the employer transfers the remaining percentage of the respective salary. And D, the monetary transfer for the state lasts 6 months with the condition to keep the job for 4 months after the end of the benefit. In addition, the Minister of Women, Genders and Diversity also launched last July 2021 a measure that recognizes and gives economic value to the work that women do for raising their children. The program is aimed at women with children who are of retirement age, 60 years or more, and do not have the necessary years of contributions, and who do not have a retirement granted or pending. The measure is part of the initiative promoted by the Interministerial Table of Care Policies, which bring together 15 bodies of the national executive power to plan and implement policies that contribute to the fair social organization of care. This measure clearly impacts on a more equitable retribution between the genders and help to recognize care as a need, as a job, as a human right. Having said that, I would like to wrap up so the other speakers can participate. I want to stress that the right to live a life free of violence and to develop autonomous life projects without discrimination is presented as an essential condition to live in more equal, diverse, just, and respectful society for the human right for all people. This is one of the pillars of our national gender policies. Thank you for giving me the chance to share this measure with you. Again, I want to wish you a very frank and productive discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for reminding us of the practical aspects of adapting the ILO Convention to the national legislative framework, and also for the interministerial efforts, because it's a cross-sectoral initiative. So that's very important. And for all the initiatives that you mentioned for the empowerment of women in the economic and financial aspects. Thank you very much. Before we go on, I'm going to introduce the next speaker right away, but before we go on, I'd just like to very briefly recognize the presence of Ms. Anita Thomas, who's the convener of the NGO coalition to promote ratification of ILO C-190. She's here with us. She has done a tremendous job in promoting that ratification. And since we're going to talk about it next, I'd like, it's a pleasure for me to recognize her. Next, we're going to hear from Beate Andres, ILO Special Representative to the United Nations and Director of the ILO at the UN. Prior to her appointment in New York, she was Chief of Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work in ILO Geneva. And she has been instrumental in launching Alliance 8.5 to end forced labor, child labor, and human trafficking. So the topic for her today is ILO C-190. And so we're going to hear more about it in the world of work. Thank you, Beate. You have now the floor.
Thank you so much, Maria. And I also want to thank the Permanent Mission of Argentina and Soroptimist International for convening these meetings and for inviting us. Ambassador Squeff, we commend your efforts, both promoting gender equality in Argentina, but also in New York, and of course your key role in CSW 66. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you for your opening remarks. I also want to acknowledge and salute the Canadian Labour Congress. We work very closely with of course, the ITUC, and we have the Executive Vice President here, who's also chair of the ITUC Women's Committee, so that's wonderful. And I really want to extend my heartfelt thanks to civil society organizations more broadly. Maria, you already mentioned Anita, I had her on my list as well. It's been absolutely fantastic to work with her and the whole coalition of NGOs to eliminate violence and harassment at work. The work you have done over the last 2 or more years now to promote ratification of 190 is really remarkable and has helped a lot to advance the agenda. So thank you very much. Now, allow me, before coming to the specific issue of Convention 190, just allow me to put the discussion in a broader context, because as you just said, and others before me, the COVID-19 pandemic really put a spotlight on the importance of, first, care work, second, formal employment, in particular, formalization of social protection benefits, and third, of course, the subject I'll focus on, the prevention of violence and harassment, both at home and at work. I think it's really important to see the connection between two, and during the pandemic where work and home collapsed into one, for many, not for all, but for many, I think it became even more critical. So I just want to share a few words on care work and formality because of the topical nature of it. Just earlier this month, on the occasion of the International Women's Day, we launched a new report on the care economy, including on parental leave, universal childcare and long-term care services. And we've seen that investments in the care economy, which would be so important to really liberate women to play a full role in the economy at large, could create up to 300 million jobs, both for women and men. I just want to be clear, I'm not suggesting that the care economy is only for women. It's actually very important to promote the care economy for both. And this could lead potentially to an increase of GDP by 3.6% in 2035. It's the first time that we've been able to put really these precise numbers on it, and we hope that this can be can support governments in making those strategic policy choices. And as we've just heard from the permanent representative of Argentina, how important the sector is and what legal measures have to be taken. And this is, of course, really important to accompany these investments with legal measures. And on the issue of formalization, again, we just heard from this program in Argentina, Registrada, that's absolutely critical for women's employment. What we see based on our data is that there are about 2 billion workers in the informal economy. Globally speaking, almost half of them are women. But if you look at developing countries, actually the vast majority of workers in the informal economy are women. So they were also hit disproportionately by the COVID pandemic when the closures, when the lockdown measures started. They've lost their jobs, and they've also had no access very often to social protection benefits. So the formalization of employment really has to go hand in hand with the formalization of social benefits. And therefore, we have just now embarked on a joint initiative with the UNDP to develop pathways for formality, as is also being called for by the Secretary General in his common agenda. And now let me focus on, come briefly on the topic here, ending violence and harassment in the workplace. So the good news is, actually, as of this morning, I was told Mexico is the latest country that has ratified. So that takes us now to the number of countries that have ratified the convention to 12. UK was the other recent country that has ratified. So I think very good news. And as you can see, the momentum is now being built. Again, very much thanks also to the work of the NGOs here in New York. And we hope that ratification will continue. As you know, the convention recognizes the right of everyone to work free from violence and harassment, including gender-based violence and harassment. And it makes also a very important connection to the ILO's fundamental principles and rights at work. In particular, freedom of association, collective bargaining, and also non-discrimination. And it calls for the adoption of an inclusive, integrated, gender-responsive approach, working together with workers and employers organizations. Again, a very, very strong focus of, as you know, of the ILO's approach is to discuss strategies and legal measures in a tripartite way. And in many countries, workers and employers organizations are actually instrumental in promoting modification. And then also importantly, and again, we have seen this with COVID-19, the convention also calls for specific measures for women working in sectors and occupations or in special work arrangements where they're more exposed to the risk of violence and harassment. So that really sectorial approach is very important. So dear ladies and gentlemen, and dear colleagues and friends, I think it's clear that as we are now emerging from the pandemic, we cannot afford and we should not expect to find our societies exactly where we've left them 2 years ago. We should work on, as our Director General has called it, a better normal, which is also why the ILO has supported the Secretary General's call for a global accelerator for jobs and social protection, which aims to create 400 million jobs and to extend social protection to 4 billion people. And I invite you all to be part of this UN-wide initiative to help us generate and mobilize investments in the care, green, and digital economies, and really to provide a brighter future for all men and women, and to ensure that measures to prevent violence and harassment at work are really integrated in all of those strategies. So thank you so much for giving us the floor. And again, it's great to see you all there, and we continue working together on this very important agenda.
Thank you very much, Beate, for focusing on the need to integrate all those policies, the recognition of care work, of unpaid care work, the extension of social protections to all workers, and of course, the prevention of violence and harassment in the workplace, or now the two, there's no difference. The difference has been blurred. It could be the professional workplace or it could be at home. So we welcome C-190, this important legal instrument for the prevention and eradication of violence in the workplace. Thank you very much. Our next speaker will address the closing the gender pay gap. Siobhán Vipond is the Executive Vice President of the Canadian Labour Congress, as Beate has already indicated, and Vice Chair of the ITUC Women's Committee, a committed trade unionist who works tirelessly to defend the rights of workers in both the private and the public sector. Siobhán, welcome, and you now have the floor.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this important discussion. I want to share the perspective of from Canada in terms of what we've learned and also where we have succeeded, but also where our challenges exist. In 2018, the Canadian Labour Congress launched our #DoneWaiting campaign, an innovative and powerful campaign for women's economic justice. Our goal was to build public pressure on decision makers, and specifically our self-declared feminist government, to raise the bar and advance women's equality. Now, when we launched, the campaign highlighted 3 key priorities that would help Canada make real progress towards women's economic justice. This included the ending of sexual harassment and violence, fixing our childcare crisis, and ending wage discrimination. For each of these 3 pillars, we made concrete demands of the federal government. And in 2019, we added a 4th pillar to the campaign to make work fair for women. And this was designed to draw attention to barriers for women in workplaces. These barriers include discrimination in hiring and promotion, lack of access to training, the disproportionate burden of unpaid care and domestic work, poor access to public services, precarious jobs, and the hours of work. Now, it is, of course, impossible to separate these 4 pillars completely. If you don't have childcare, it is very hard to find decent work. And if you don't have decent work, you are more likely to experience reduced lifetime earnings and be more vulnerable to harassment. And that's why #DoneWaiting has been so important because the campaign explored the connections and the complications while demonstrating that concrete action can make a real difference, particularly for the most marginalized women. And the hashtag seemed the best way to express a persistent sense of frustration of the lack of meaningful progress on some of these key barriers for women. We had a newly elected government and a prime minister that had publicly labeled himself a feminist. So we felt the time was right to really push on some of the biggest challenges to women's economic justice. And one of these challenges is the realization of the right to equal pay for work of equal value, or pay equity. After decades of advocacy, even after a federal task force mapped out the components of potential federal proactive pay equity legislation, you can imagine that women's patience had run out, especially with gender wage gaps that don't seem to be getting any better. And yes, we say gender wage gaps in the plural because it's important to acknowledge that wage discrimination impacts different women in different ways. In Canada, the wage gap is much wider for Indigenous women, Black and racialized women, and for women with disabilities. While collective bargaining has helped narrow wage gaps in numerous ways for workers who have a union, we also needed proactive pay equity legislation to address stubborn and systemic wage discrimination and realize the right to equal pay for work of equal value. And let's take a moment, because I really want to explain the difference between equal pay or equal pay for equal work and pay equity, which is the equal pay for work of equal value. Equal pay for equal work means that people who are doing the same job or similar jobs receive the same compensation regardless of their gender. Now, this is important, and we often hear about giving women tools to negotiate or promoting pay transparency in order to expose unequal pay. But a focus on equal pay for equal work alone doesn't really address the systemic sexist wage discrimination that perpetrates the gender wage and income gaps. And that is primarily the undervaluing of women's work. Equal pay for work of equal value includes the concept of equal pay, but extends it to recognize that the jobs that are traditionally dominated by women, who are not always compensated fairly when compared to the jobs that are traditionally performed by men, even when the work requires comparable skill, effort, responsibility, and has similar working conditions. In 1951, the ILO established the human right to equal pay for work of equal value, and when it adopted Convention 100. And the Equal Remuneration Convention is the name of it. And it's one of the 8 fundamental conventions of the ILO. Now, Canada ratified C100 in 1972, and in 1977, the principle of equal pay for work of equal value was enshrined in the Human Rights Act, along with a process whereby women could file complaints if they felt their rights were being violated. This complaints-based system yielded some important victories for groups of women workers who had been undervalued and underpaid. But the catch was that it would take decades for these processes to make their way through our system. And many women retired or even passed away while waiting for their complaints to be resolved or for the corrective payments to be distributed. Now, in 2001, the Canadian government appointed an independent pay equity task force to conduct a review and make recommendations to better achieve pay equity in the federally regulated employment sectors. And the report was submitted in May of 2004. After extensive consultations, it recommended that the complaints-based system be replaced by a standalone proactive pay equity legislation, putting the onus on employers to identify and correct wage discrimination. The report had 113 detailed recommendations to help guide the path forward. And Canada's unions have been pushing for the implementation of the task force recommendations ever since, including in our Done Waiting campaign. In late 2018, the Pay Equity Act was finally tabled. Now, it's not perfect, but it is indeed a start. Now unions are working to ensure that it is effectively implemented. The Pay Equity Act requires federally regulated employers with an average of 10 or more employees to take a proactive approach to correct gender wage gaps within their organization. Working with employees and bargaining agent representatives on pay equity committees, workplaces are required to analyze their compensation systems, comparing women-dominated job classes with those dominated by men. If wage discrimination is discovered, employers need to increase the pay for the job classes that are underpaid. Proactive pay equity can help, but for it to work, the process needs to be collaborative and transparent, and everyone involved needs to keep the objective of ensuring equal pay for work of equal value in mind. Now, we're a few years away from seeing whether this legislation will be effective. It's also just one tool in our toolbox. If we are really going to narrow the gender pay gap, we need to address other systemic barriers to women's economic justice. We need to fix the childcare system by building a system of universal, high quality, affordable, and inclusive childcare. This helps to reduce and redistribute the disproportionate load of caring and domestic work that women perform, which limits their labor force participation and their lifetime incomes. We need to end harassment and violence, starting with the ratification of ILO Convention 190. We would be so happy to be on this list of, the dozen countries that have done so. And we need to make work fair for women, addressing all forms of discrimination in hiring and promotion, helping workers reconcile work and family responsibilities, and ensure that all workers are able to form unions and bargain collectively to ensure fair wages and working conditions. The list goes on. The COVID-19 pandemic has only worsened longstanding stark social and economic inequalities. It's no secret that the gendered impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic have hurt women the most, especially those who also face other forms of discrimination and marginalization: Black, Indigenous, and racialized women, immigrant and migrant women, women with disabilities, and lesbian, bi, trans, and queer trans women, and two-spirit, non-binary, and intersex people. At the beginning of the pandemic, more than 1.5 million women in Canada lost their jobs. Many others saw their hours and income reduced in order to care for children and other family members, and women took on the lion's share of paid and unpaid care work, keeping homes, schools, communities afloat. And there really hasn't been an end 2 years later. It's taken a pandemic to underscore how essential women's labor is to the well-being of our communities and to our economic well-being. Women's economic justice was a priority before the pandemic, but now we have reached a critical point, which means we have an opportunity to get it right. So Canada's pandemic response must center women's economic justice and must address the deep disparities that have only worsened over the last 2 years. And in addition to us getting it right on pay equity, going forward, Canada's economic recovery must address the precarity faced by workers in the care economy. It must follow through with the creation of a universal childcare system and invest in other public care services. And it must ensure that women who have been pushed out of the workforce get back to work in good jobs. And with the additional challenge of the climate crisis, unions are also working hard to ensure that a federal government's promised legislation on just transition considers the needs of women workers in the affected sectors and in communities impacted by climate change, and that women are part of this decision-making process. We've made strides towards achieving women's economic justice and closing the gender pay gap, but there's still so much work to do. Canada's unions remain committed to this work and will continue to fight for pay equity. And we will maintain pressure on decision makers to keep women's economic justice on the public agenda. We will continue to demand for action from our government. Words and promises aren't good enough, and the time for the studies and committees has passed. When the work on equal value is compensated equally for everyone, only then will our work be done. And until then, we will keep fighting. And so it's been an absolute pleasure to speaking to you today, and I look forward to the further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Siobhán. Thank you. I find that tag interesting, and I made a note, so I'll look for it. Done waiting, I like it. Because this persistence of the gender wage gap is universal, and it's not easily understood, and you explain it very well. It's really about equal work of equal value, right? And we have conventions since 1951 trying to arrange to accommodate this, and it hasn't happened. And that a progressive, well, at least theoretically progressive country as Canada still has that problem shows you how universal it is. And of course, it's a bigger problem for Indigenous, Black, and the most vulnerable groups of women. Thank you very much. And I'm glad that you have a Pay Equity Act, but that also shows us the importance of trade unions and of the rights for collective bargaining. Thank you. Thank you very much. We now go to the third speaker, and we're starting to get into NGOs doing work on the ground now. And not that the previous ones don't, but these are NGOs, not the other type of institution. So we're going to hear from Andrea Grobocopatel, president of FLOR Foundation. She's going to talk about women's empowerment and financial inclusion. Andrea is an economist, a businesswoman, and a social entrepreneur, the founder of the FLOR Foundation for Leadership and Organizational Responsibility, and also the founder of Resiliencia, SGR, which provides financial services for entrepreneurs and small and medium enterprises, especially when owned by women. So Andrea, pleasure to have you. You are in Argentina, I suppose. Are you in Buenos Aires?
Yes,
and you have the floor.
Thank you, Maria, for this opportunity. I need you allow Giselle to share screen, please. And also thank Maria del Carmen and Pilar for representing our country so well. Thank you. As I mentioned, I'm going to speak about how women's financial inclusion can contribute to their empowerment. I'm a mother of 4, a grandmother of 1. I make a living from agriculture and cattle production in Argentina, as you can see in the picture. However, I dedicate 95% of my time working for labor and financial equality, as well as good governance. I'm doing this in 2 ways, and I'm going to go deeper in a few minutes. FLOR Foundation and Resiliencia. Labor and financial inclusion for all, especially for women, are my purpose. The basis to do both is more and more education as a way of changing culture. 1/3 of adults worldwide are financially excluded. Most of them are young people, women, and women with disabilities. This summarizes how urgent is this matter to be addressed. We cannot think about decent work and women adapting to the job of the future if they are invisible in the financial system. But what is the current situation? In this slide, you will find a lot of information that reinforces that I have mentioned in the previous slide. I will not go into details, but you have I won't mention some of the information. Women are underrepresented in the world of work, and even more in the formal economy. They tend to be more self-employed. As they earn less, they have less patrimony and pay more interest rate. This is even more dramatic if we compare OECD countries versus Latin America. The number of women with bank accounts is 45% versus 94%. And when it is about loans, the number are 11 versus 15%. How do we reverse the situation? We need 2 things: equal access to the full range of financial services and education, financial literacy. I'm going to show to you the business cases, one related to the equal access and the other to financial literacy. So how do we can reverse the situation? Speaking about education, firstly, we need permanent educational program addressed to both boys and girls from preschool to university, providing focused curricular courses addressing stereotypes and unconscious bias. Girls and women tend to wait for opportunities to be offered. At all education level, we should teach women to be assertive, to ask help, to negotiate, and to create opportunities for all. We need a culture of respect that values diversity as a way to be more creative and innovative. We should also teach skills for financial autonomy, caring, and emotional intelligence. This kind of content should be provided for those adults who are multipliers. I think in teachers, educators, managers, parents associations, social workers, psychologists, politicians. That's one of the reasons we have created FLOR Foundation. One of its objectives is preparing professional women to break the glass ceiling, to reach board position and high-level management role, providing entrepreneurs the necessary skills to scale up their small medium enterprise and helping the most vulnerable women to find their financial independence. As I mentioned, we should train women in financial skills, and we address that in FLOR in 3 ways: training programs, building a network, and through our financial inclusion committee. I will talk to you about our training programs. One, at every level. One is Women Thinks, which points to women's economic independence through financial, marketing, and administration training. Another is Women in Decision, we say MED. We train them at the strategic level. It is also an invitation to be responsible leaders. As a complement, we have launched now board experience. Their MED alumni can do a kind of internship in boards. Boards benefit by having more diversity in their tables, and the women also have a curriculum with this experience. And we now launch a third program that is from entrepreneurs to business women. We came up with this because we didn't have a program in the middle of the other programs. We want entrepreneurs to think bigger and professionalize their business. Sorry, my English is gaucho. When I talk about the Financial Inclusion Committee, they are women from different backgrounds who have been part of our MED program, and they shown to think together about financial inclusion. They establish institutional connection with major players in the financial system and advocate for more equal access, fostering the creation of more products, and providing financial literacy in events and webinars. And when I talk about collaterals and financial advisory, I believe that education should be complemented with the access to the full range of financial services based on their needs. Women need concrete solutions to accessing financial services in order to grow their business and develop professionally. It's important to highlight that women often lack warrants because they don't have as many assets as men do, or they are just starting their project, so they don't have any credit score to show yet. That's why I strongly recommend the development of this as a public policy. Mutual warranty companies are a special kind of commercial society in Argentina, which are a kind of bridge between the small and medium enterprise and the banks and capital markets. We provide them with collaterals and financial advisory. But I won't talk exactly about resilience, because this mutual warranty company prioritize those small and medium enterprise and entrepreneurs that prove to be diverse, whether for the composition of the capital's ownership and workplace, as well as for their purpose and their impact. We like to say that we act as their CFO. We believe that financial inclusion presents itself as a way to achieve an economy development of our society, and ultimately the social inclusion of groups who tend to be excluded from this process: women, people with disabilities, elder peoples, and among others. This can have a massive impact by strengthening women's presence in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, fostering the visibility of female-led companies to showcase more role models. And finally, when more women work, economic growth. When more women grow their work, there is more productivity, more economic diversification, more income equality, more household wellness, better institutions, and less poverty. Gender is our best strategy. The pandemic was an opportunity to reconstruct. If we don't articulate effectively, we will spend a lot of time and money. We must join our forces and we must communicate effectively those best practices which have shown results. Being optimists and proactive, we need to look for opportunities and take positive action now. The critical question to discuss with each other is how we are going to put these ideas into practice. What specific actions are currently being successful around the world and how they are working. I always say that I don't want to die before I see real change. I believe we are all working hard on this issue. So my expectations are that the next generation will celebrate in each other's success and feel empowered and be able to do what they want to do, free from gender barriers and stereotypes. And we will not need to be talking about this issue anymore. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for innovative ways to include women in the financial world and in the world of work. For the mutual guarantee companies innovation, I find it very interesting. And also for seeing, for such an uplifting message, really, for seeing gender equality as a means or as a way to economic growth. Thank you very much. Next, we will hear from Soroptimist International Advisor, Beverly Bucher, who's an education specialist with 40 years of experience in education and curriculum design at all levels, and a Soroptimist since 1993, and a very cherished colleague that has helped me a lot in these 3 years to advance, together with Betty Levy. Bev will present our program at Soroptimist that is called Dream It, Be It, for career support and mentoring for girls. The floor is yours, Bev.
Thank you, Maria. I'm very happy to be here, and I thank everyone for the wonderful presentations. I'm going to focus on education. We know that education is key for women to reach social and economic empowerment. It unlocks opportunities, it narrows inequalities, and it is the key to financial independence for women. But when we think about education and jobs of the future, we really are training women for careers that may not at this time exist. We know that things are changing so fast in the world. Artificial intelligence is taking over many jobs that women particularly held at one time. Artificial intelligence is taking over jobs like customer service representatives. Even if you go to your supermarket, you check yourself out now, there are very few clerks. There are very few people answering phones. We know that women also have, other burdens and have been taking jobs that are low in the low economic pay scale. We know that we are going to have to, throughout our lifetime, train and retrain to prepare ourselves to join the workforce and to be prepared for the jobs that will be part of our reality. And that includes technology, and it includes higher level skills such as STEM and ways of working with people. I am going to discuss two programs with you today. Just a little bit about Soroptimist. Soroptimist International is in over 120 countries, and we are in about 3,000 communities. In South and Central America, we have about 60 clubs, and we do have a club in Buenos Aires. So perhaps there's some opportunity for change. Throughout the world, Soroptimists work on educating and empowering opportunities and mentoring for girls, young women, and women. But today I'm going to focus on two programs that are part of the programs of Soroptimist International, the Americas. Soroptimist International Americas contains all of North and South Central America, as well as some of the countries in Asia, including Taiwan, Korea, and the Philippines. Now, the first of Soroptimist International programs is the Live Your Dream Award. And this program is when we talk about training women for jobs of the future, this program focuses on a particular category of women. It's unique because it's an award for women who are the primary financial support for their families. These women may have faced obstacles within their lives, such as domestic violence. They might have been pregnant, teen mothers, and unable to complete their education. Many of them have suffered domestic violence and other forms of abuse. And this award gives women resources, financial resources, to help them improve their lives through education and skills. This then allows them to increase their employment prospects. We know that when women go to school, well, when girls go to school, they're more likely to get higher paying jobs and their financial contributions to their family and nations increase. We know that when girls and women go to school, they're less likely to suffer instances of violence, including trafficking and domestic violence. We know that when women and girls go to school, they lead healthier lives. And when girls have a mom who has completed her education, then they are more likely to stay in school and reach a higher level of education. Women who are educated not only create financial opportunities for their family, but also for their communities and for their countries. Now, the Live Your Dream Award, next slide, please. The Live Your Dream Award has been in existence since 1972 under a variety of names. And since that time, there's been over $30 million in educational awards to 30 million women. Every year, Soroptimist clubs throughout the world are encouraged to give one or more Live Your Dream Award. They start out at the local level where women receive funding. The difference between this award and a scholarship is that it does not have to be used to pay tuition or books. We know that when women go to school and they're heads of household, they have other obstacles to completing their education. And as we have already mentioned, that includes childcare. It may include transportation. It may include putting food on the table or clothing for their families. And this award allows the woman to decide what she wants to spend that money on to make the biggest impact for her to complete her education. Some of the benefits of this award that members who have gotten this award, they say that they have an improved standard of living, but also women who apply and receive this award, they have higher paying employments. But I think the main benefit is that women who receive a Live Your Dream Award have an increased self-esteem. As an educator and someone who's worked in colleges with women who are at basic skills level, this award is so important because most other educational awards focus on scholarship, and this one focuses more on financial need, career goals and objectives, and clubs not only give the financial award, but they also work with the women, mentoring them and helping them to build their self-esteem. Now, this award is given annually, and you can apply, anyone can apply for that award. If you go to the Soroptimist website, there will be opportunities to apply for the award. And if you apply through the Soroptimist International website, your award application will be sent to the nearest club in your community. Soroptimist International has also awards that they give if the applicant does not live near a Soroptimist club. The second award is also very important. I mean, the second program is also very important, and it's Dream It, Be It Career Support for Girls. This program aims to give girls the tools that they need to break the cycle of poverty, to learn about career goals and empower them. Girls who complete the program have a greater outlook, a more positive outlook towards education. They also learn about violence and abuse. In our particular program in my club, we worked with the local police to teach them about trafficking, domestic violence, and to give them the skills that they need to recognize how to stay safe. This program has a curriculum, and part of the curriculum is learning from experts. So our program, we invite experts in focusing on STEM careers, and those experts give the girls the information that they need, not only what STEM careers are, the education they need, and mentoring opportunities if that's the path that they choose to follow. Another part of the program is goal setting. Often girls feel lost and confused because they don't know how to go about starting and learning what their career goals might be. So there are sessions and games regarding how to set goals and how to, I'm sorry, I lost my PowerPoint. How to set goals and how to learn about the various opportunities. Another part of the program is how to overcome obstacles. Many of the girls face obstacles within their homes situations and are unable to complete their goals. So the program gives them some strategies and opportunities for them to succeed and complete their education. Next slide, please. So this program was launched in 2015, and already more than 84,000 girls from around the world have participated in this program. And the girls who participate report that, I'm sorry, they report that they are more likely to want to stay in school. They have a positive outlook towards learning. They are able to create goals for the future. And some of the girls in my particular school, they not only demonstrate more self-confidence, but they come back to be mentors for other girls in other classes. So these are just a few of the programs that we can, and things that we can do to support girls and women as they move forward with education. Please go to Soroptimist International for more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev. Thank you for yours and Soroptimist focus on education and helping women regain their dignity also. their self-esteem, their dignity by pursuing careers according to their financial need. Thank you very much. I think that's really important. And to get the jobs of the future. And talking about the jobs of the future, our next speaker, last but not least, is Elena Pinetti, pardon me. Scientist at Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory in the US, and a proud Soroptimist, a passionate advocate for women in science, and a founder of the first Soroptimist e-club in Italy. Elena, you have the floor, and I know you have your own PowerPoint.
Yes.
If you want to share your screen, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm sharing my screen. Okay, in principle, you should see my presentation now.
Yes, we do.
Okay. So hi, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Today, I will talk about the importance of STEM education for women and girls. Let me, one moment.
I think you can launch it from the bottom.
Yeah, it's not changing
your
the
screen.
slide. Yeah. Wait. Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. So I would like to start with a memory from my high school years. In particular, when I was on a school trip, one of my classmates told me that men are smarter than women. And in his opinion, the proof was demonstrated by the fact that we mostly know of male scientists or male Nobel laureates. And I remember that that comment hurt me a lot because it made me realize that the only female scientist that I could think of was Marie Curie, which is actually a remarkable story if you think that not only she became the first female professor at Sorbonne University, but to date, she's the only person among men and women with 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 different scientific subjects, physics and chemistry. And Marie Curie moved to France from Poland in order to get a qualification because most universities in the world did not accept female students, and therefore only men had access to education. Now, during my university years, I also learned about a second famous female scientist, Vera Rubin. She was an American astronomer who attempted to enroll at Princeton University, but she was barred due to her gender. So she graduated at Cornell University, and her study provides the first compelling evidence of the existence of dark matter in the universe. So today I would be able to reply to that classmate that denied access to education and history books overlooking the female contributions are the 2 main reasons why we don't know about the important role of women in science. Marie Curie and Vera Rubin are 2 important examples of women in physics, but in every field, you will find successful women who gave major contributions to their field. Here, I just briefly recall a few outstanding examples. So Rosalind Franklin was a chemist who discovered the helical structure of the DNA, but she didn't receive the credit for her discovery since her research was stolen by her male colleagues who were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology. Dorothy Vaughan, Katherine Johnson, Mary Jackson are 3 mathematicians who worked at NASA during the space race. Their contributions were vital for space science, and there is also a beautiful movie called Hidden Figures, which I recommend about their story. Jane Goodall is arguably the best primatologist in the world. She became world famous for her studies on primates and for her environmental advocacy. And I also want to mention Concetta Castilletti, Maria Rosaria Capobianchi, and Francesca Colavita, 3 Italian researchers in Rome, who first isolated the genomic structure of the coronavirus, making it easier to find a vaccine and hopefully get back to normal very soon. And these are a few examples of women from different countries and different social backgrounds. And what do they have in common? Well, they all gave a great contribution in STEM fields, and they all belong to a minority in science because women are still very much a minority. Now, one can ask, why is it important to study STEM? Well, reason number 1 is that there are more job opportunities than people with a scientific background, and the number of positions keep increasing. So according to projections, an increase of more than 8% is expected between 2017 and 2029, much more than any other non-STEM field. And an increase of 22% is expected for software developers. And since 1990, jobs requiring a scientific background have increased by 79%. And then reason number 2, people with technical skills are the most wanted candidates in the job market. Therefore, they usually earn higher salaries, which more likely leads to financial independence. Also, the gender pay gap is much narrower in STEM careers with respect to other fields. In fact, in STEM fields, women earn on average 92 cents for every dollar earned by men, compared to 77 cents for other types of careers. Now, we obviously want to completely overcome the gender pay gap in every field, but at least in STEM careers, we are closer. Despite this, women are only 35% of all students enrolled in STEM fields and only 28% of researchers in the world. So the question is, what are the barriers to overcome and how can we encourage girls to pursue STEM careers? There are different factors which can be summarized in 4 different levels. There is a societal level related to the fact that cultural and social norms influence girls' perception about their abilities, about their role in society, as well as their career and life aspirations. In particular, in countries with greater gender equality, girls tend to have more positive attitudes and confidence about science. On the contrary, gender stereotypes portrayed, for instance, in the media and internalized by both children and adults have an impact in our way of thinking. Then there is the school level related to the education system and in general to the school environment. Qualified teachers with specialization in science can positively influence girls' performance and engagement with STEM education. And in particular, female STEM teachers appear to have stronger benefits for girls, probably because they act as role models. Now, how many times have you noticed that in school books, the image of a scientist is always a man and the image of a nurse is always a woman? So educational materials play an important role and positive images about women in STEM are essential. Regarding the family level, parents' beliefs and expectations contribute to shaping girls' attitude and interest in STEM studies. Parents with traditional beliefs about gender roles who treat girls and boys unequally can reinforce negative stereotypes and discourage their daughters to pursue a STEM career. Finally, concerning the individual level, self-selection bias is the major reason for girls opting out of STEM, and this bias is heavily influenced by stereotypical ideas about gender roles. In fact, girls who assimilate such stereotypes have lower confidence in their ability and lower aspirations for a STEM career. Scientifically speaking, no differences are observed in the neural mechanism of learning based on sex, and research suggests that differences in cognitive ability are larger among individuals than between men and women. Now the point is, what can we do in order to have more women in STEM and to overcome the barriers that women and girls face? So I will give you some ideas of projects that we are doing with the e-club Soroptimist Milano at lead, of which I am the president. So one of the reasons why few girls enrolled in STEM curricula is the lack of role models. For this reason, we started a project called Friday STEM. Every Friday, we publish on our social media a short video where one of our STEM members explains why she chose a STEM career and what is her job about. If we show the amusing side of science, we can foster the interest and the motivation of girls and engage more of them in studying a STEM subject. Now, on one side, we want to encourage girls to study STEM subjects, but on the other side, we need to create the conditions in the workplace so that women remain and advance in their career. Unfortunately, inside many universities and research centers, there is still a problem of gender discrimination. So we need to raise awareness among the leaders and the people about this situation. For this reason, with my club, we are going to host a screening of the movie Picture a Scientist, that tells the story of many women in science and the challenges that they face. It is also important to build networks with other groups and associations. For example, I am part of the Supernova Foundation, which is a mentoring program for women in physics. We are a community of more than 400 women from all over the world. And the goal of this community is that experienced scientists provide guidance and support through personal mentorships to students in order to encourage female students to pursue a career in science. Scholarships are also a useful means to support women in need, especially because we know that if we support a woman to get a STEM degree, that woman will likely be financially independent. And with my club, we are doing an advocacy project called Keep a Girl in School. This project provides washable sanitary pads to girls with a disadvantaged background in South Africa who otherwise will likely drop out of school. So I hope that I have convinced you of the importance of women participating in STEM fields and how we can improve the current situation. If there is anybody interested in collaborating with my club, feel free to reach out to us. And with this, I conclude, and I thank all of you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Elena. Beautiful presentation of the challenges that women face when trying to enroll a career in science. But of course, many of those are at the social level, not at the, both at the institutional, but I find that the social level are the hardest to treat because they are based on the wrong stereotypes. And you're doing a great job destroying those deceiving stereotypes. I particularly was attracted to the examples in history that you gave. And honestly, the film Hidden Figures was very revealing to me that those three marvelous women were behind the launching into orbit of astronaut John Glenn. How often do you hear about that? So thank you very much. With this, we conclude the presentations, and we're going to move into question and answer part of our panel before we finish. Sorry, I was engrossed in your presentation. Honestly, I wasn't prepared to take up the floor again. Great presentations, all of them. I think that we've done a good job covering the role of the state, the role of international institutions, the role of trade unions and advocacy and NGOs, and the role of education. So I hope that you have seen that we covered so many sustainable development goals that all hang together, of course, starting with decent work, SDG 8, SDG 5, gender equality, SDG 4, education, and hopefully this will all result in peace and justice and strong institutions, which is SDG 16. Okay, let's see if there are any questions in the chat box or if people are raising their hands. I think we have about 15 minutes, or yes, I turn it
Maria,
over to you, Lee. Yes.
Oh, sorry, Maria, through you. Anita Thomas has two questions. She was the first one to Andrea. Would you like,
can you read them?
Is Anita there, or would you like me to read them out?
Oh, no, Anita can ask them if she's still with us. Yes, sure. Anita, can you unmute yourself?
The first one, I'll give the first one while she's coming on. To Andrea, could you speak to the 9% gender gap in financial inclusion that continues to persist between men and women? What do you have to address this gap? What recommendations do you have to address this gap? That's the first one.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions. I believe, as Maria said, the role of the different organizations. I believe there are a very important role of our government. We need infrastructure, because sometimes when I talk about financial inclusion, different things, I get that some rural women, for example, they say, Andrea, we have a big problem. We don't have water in my house. So I need time to pick up for my water, and then I can talk about financial inclusion. So we have one big problem is the infrastructure. So we need water, we need internet, connectivity in the rural areas. This is in my country, in Iberoamerica. In Latin America, we have this big problem. And so then we are working a lot with the banks. As you say, as you ask, we go to the bank and we say, we need reduce the rates because we need more women think that they can take the loans, because normally they think that they cannot take the loans. So we need enthusiasm. And the only way, we have a problem in Argentina that the rates are very high. So we go to the banks, the capital market, and we say, if you reduce the rates, we can get more women to go to your banks. And so we gave the advisors, we are a bridge. We need more bridge. We need more be near from the person, because sometimes we open doors, but then we need accompany them in the process. So I believe, is this the answer? Are you happy with this, or you need more?
No. This is Anita Thomas. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for not being able to connect earlier. I'm driving, so it's a little bit of difficulty. But I wanted to just thank you so much to Soroptimist and to Maria, Beata, everybody who is in the room, Ambassador Squeff. This has been an incredible event, so very insightful and eye-opening event. So thank you for hosting it and organizing it. My second question, I also chair the NGO Committee on Financing for Development. So my questions on financial inclusion are coming from that perspective. My second question is with regard to the community banks. And as we are doing our research, we see that community banks are closing across the universe, across the globe, and in the US as well, and they're closing. And these community banks are pillars of the community, where women really, many times when women are looking for loans or financial access, the local community bank is their resource, because they understand what the background of these women, and so it can really help them with tailoring a loan. But we are seeing that fintech firms are coming into the space with digital financial services. So my question is, could you just speak to the shift in strategies and its impact on advancing financial access for women in marginalized communities?
Sometimes I hear talk about microcredits, or I believe that we don't have micro life. We need credits, we need loans, we need insurance, we need the same. So this is one thing. When we are talking about fintech, it's very interesting, the process, we reduce costs, but as I say, we have a big problem in a lot of countries, and in the more rural areas, we don't have connectivity, we don't have internet. So we need infrastructure to first of talk about this. We need the government help with this situation. So the other things is the banks don't have time to attend the small medium enterprise, because our companies, the social warranty, are in the middle as a bridge. So because we need bridge, because this person cannot go to all the banks or the capital markets or the fintech. So we need bridge, we need advisor, we need people who are enthusiastic with this and help the others. We cannot, because sometimes we explain what we must do, we talk a lot about this, but then in the action is a problem. The action, and we need act, but helping, being in the territory. We need to be in that places where the women are with more problems, and then we can help.
Thank you, Andrea. Lee, do we have the next question?
Yes, from Nina Smart. The next question is for Siobhán. How effective has the Done Waiting campaign been?
Thanks. Yeah, some of the times that is hard to measure. I think we have made real progress. As I said, the pay equity legislation did come into place, and we're just in the processes right now of expanding that. I think it also helped us really connect all of those issues together, because I think that has always been the challenge. We are on the verge here in Canada. We are short one province of actually signing on to a big investment from our federal government on childcare. And that has been extremely important and has a lot of indicators of how that will have a positive impact. And that is in part because of the campaigns us and the labor movement have had with society. And then of course, and then in addition to that, we're launching now a care campaign, because again, all of these are so connected, and when we separate them, we have victories, but they're not fixing the problem of the pay gap in Canada and around the world is not getting better. And I think that is an indication of, not that our attempts have been bad in the past, but we're not actually getting to the root of the problem. And so that to me is where Done Waiting has helped. It's also helping our care campaign, which we are talking about things in a more wholesome way. And then that advocacy to tie all of those things together. And I think, Elena, in your presentation, when it showed that kind of rainbow of like all of these different factions and parts that the different levels of things that needed to change. I mean, I think that is in all of our advocacy work, and that's exactly what needs to happen. But we have also seen that changes in policy do cause changes in our societal view on things. And so it is possible. I mean, I'll give a small example just on childcare in Quebec, which has been around for many years. Not only did we see an improved rate of women actually participating in paid work so that their economic justice was going up. What we also saw was more men taking parental leave, which is allowed in Canada, because the impact of what childcare had on this gender dynamic in a binary kind of relationship was lessened. And so what happened in society is we were having what we think is a big part of this, which is the redistribution of unpaid work. And so I do think strongly that the campaign was successful. We're not done by any stretch. And I think you put it out very far. We know we are a very fortunate and privileged country of Canada, and we still have a long way to go to get to gender equity. So we will not stop, but that wholesome look has been very successful. And we have other successes that exist in there that we can show in terms of all policy wins. So thank you for that question.
Maria, next we have a comment from Valerie to Elena. Does Valerie want to speak herself, or do you want me to read it out?
Yes, before we do that, can I ask Beati a question, please? I wanted to ask you to expand on what the ILO itself, I'm thinking of the value of international instruments, but also ILO is the type of organization that really helps countries implement. Could you talk to that, please? Just shortly, and then we'll read Valerie's comment, and then we'll wrap up.
Well, thank you so much, Maria, for also forcing us to focus on implementation and not just on developing good policy frameworks. Exactly. Of course, as I said, our constituents play a key role here in the implementation. Now, what we've done as an office, especially on Convention 190, last year we launched a campaign, and I can share the link in the chat box where you will see a lot of very useful tools that you can also use in your work. And of course, we do have colleagues on the ground in many countries around the world that work very concretely with governments and with the social partners, but also with civil society to develop legal frameworks, to assist, provide policy, technical advice, how to change laws in order to ratify that convention. So there's a lot of concrete work going on. And it was also very inspiring to hear from colleagues what they've been doing. I mean, not least, of course, from Canada. But yeah, so I'll share the link in the chat box, and thank you again for including us in this conversation.
Thank you very much. Okay, Lee, you can go ahead, and then we'll wrap up because it's already, I think, I don't know, we'll have time for one more question.
Okay.
Yeah,
There
go
is one, I know there are a couple of other questions, but one question to Elena, if she wants to make a comment on the comment, is are the Club Friday videos in English or Italian, and where can we find them? Then I'll go back to the comment that came up.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, the videos are both in Italian and English. So we speak Italian in the videos because it was addressed to Italian schools, but there is also an English translation in the comments, and they're all in our Facebook and Instagram pages. And let me also add that on the line of education, with my club, we're also doing another project, which is a school diary for kids to promote gender equality. Each month of the diary focuses on a topic, for instance, STEM and technology. And we presented always two biographies, always a man and a woman, to reinforce the idea that professions have no gender. So there will always be the male scientist and the female scientist, for example. And there are also like education games. I saw that in the comments, someone was also commenting on the importance of toys. These are not like toys for boys and toys for girls. So this is in the line of education. The diary is in Italian, but we are considering to, if someone is interested, to give it also to the other Soroptimist clubs in the world, and you know, to share it with everyone who is interested, maybe translating in English or in other languages. So.
All right.
Maria, Elena
Yes.
covered the comment on the toys, the great needed changes, great presentation.
Mhm. All right, Maureen, if you're ready, I think we can wrap it up here. I want to thank the distinguished speakers. It was wonderful to hear all the different perspectives. Again, you know, we have member states, we have trade unions, we have international labor organization, and then the businesswoman trying to include financially all the vulnerable groups around her in Argentina, and then finally the two who focused on the importance of education for the future of women and jobs. So I want to thank you. And Maureen, I don't know if you want to say some departing words.
I just want to say a massive thank you to you, Maria, because this has been quite a job of putting on this side event, and also to the permanent mission of the Argentina at the UN. I have been really amazed at what I've heard today, and I think the speakers were all wonderful, excellent, give us some real food for thought on how we can go forward. So may I just say thank you on behalf of Soroptimist International. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Bye.